Yeah, sir. I did.
आ नहीं रहा है अभी यूट्यूब में। संपी जो ना यूट्यूब में चेक करनी पेमेंट।
Just a minute.
यूट्यूब में आ नहीं रहा है।
I did start the streaming.
किया स्ट्रीमिंग स्टार्ट।
Yes, the streaming is on.
यूट्यूब में जाके एक बार चेक करो, वहाँ पे कुछ गो लाइव या ऐसा कुछ।
આવ્યું
Actually, YouTube.
આવે છે હા दिखा दिया हजी वो स्टोरी
फेसबुक इज ऑन।
Should I put the stream key again?
जस्ट गिव इट अ ट्राई।
Yeah.
सॉरी हाँ થોડુંક હેક્ટિક થઈ ગયું એટલે થોડા સેટિંગ્સ હલી ગયા છે અને we have one person in our studio, she is not well, so usually the one who she does the streaming on YouTube, એટલે just થોડુંક glitch છે। Facebook માં actually live ચાલુ થઈ ગયું છે, એટલે whatever we are speaking now is going.
अच्छा ओके
એક મિનિટ।
I put the stream key. Okay.
હવે કાઢી નાખ માર્ક્સ
नहीं वो आवाज जाएगी नहीं इसलिए। Okay, it has started, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, hello everyone and welcome on ArchiDiaries. We are going to have another interview in our ongoing live interview series, which is titled as Reflections on Architecture and Design. I'm really glad to share that today we have with us very dear friends and colleagues, Vipuja and Krushnakant from UA Lab. Vipuja and Krushnakant, welcome on ArchiDiaries and thank you for accepting the invitation.
Thank you Ayaz.
So, yeah.
No, please.
So we also have Gayatri Gorkha with us. Gayatri is also an architect. Somebody's been working here at ArchiDiaries, and she'll help us take the questions from the social media towards the end. There are good questions coming from there. So let me introduce UA Lab, and then I will hand it over to Vipuja and Krushnakant to make their presentation. UA Lab is a multidisciplinary design studio headed by Vipuja and Krushnakant. Their portfolio comprises a wide scale of design projects ranging from private residential spaces to community housing and community space design. ULA provides design services in architecture, landscape design, and interior design. The design approach at ULab is always focused on the basic questions of scale, proportions, character, spaciousness, daylight, ventilation, and climatic comfort in the built environments. These aspects inform conceptual positions and guide the design process. The design process is all about creating synchronization between innovation, humane spaces, and ambitious requirements. ULF's design uh, has been recognized and published in various national and international design websites and magazines. In 2017, ULF was awarded the Triple ID Design Excellence Award at the zonal level. In 2019, ULF was also shortlisted at Vardasia Award in the same year. ULF's manifesto was selected to be presented at Women in Design 2020 Plus, curated by Hector Foundation. I'm really delighted to have ULab, both of you, Vipuja and Krushnakant, here with us. And over to you for the presentation.
Thank you, Ayaz. Thank you so much for inviting us at ArchiDiaries. And it's a pleasure to be part of this series called Reflections. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I would just like to start sharing the screen.
Yes.
Yeah. I hope the screen is visible.
Yes, the screen is visible.
Just one second. Just one second.
एक minute.
Okay. So as as Aya's already mentioned about ULab, our design dwells on basic questions addressing the comfort of built environment, and we do understand comfort with these basic aspects, which are very basic to the urban environment in terms of light, scale, proportion, daylight, spaciousness. And in this way, each project, provides an opportunity to be innovative in order to address these aspects differently. At the same time, each project presents itself with ambitious requirements, and it has got its context of its own. And it's a synchronization of all these aspects that inform our conceptual positions. Just one sec. And it is under this environment that each of the design, tries to shape itself and gets a unique identity. And this is how we try to work and develop a particular methodology for each of the project. And this is a compilation of few of our projects where it is more like an effort to create a unique identity, giving each project its value and its character in terms of its requirement and the context where it is placed. And here today for this particular presentation, we are trying to compile a few of the projects which are of varied scale. And in each of the projects, we are trying to discuss the kind of method that we have, that through a particular approach, what are the different methods that we try to evolve. And we use drawing as an important tool in order to develop, these designs. So the first project that we present to us is the Harnav River Edge. And the project is about an urban park. It's in a place called Khed Brahma. Khed Brahma is a small town near Sabarkantha. And this particular piece of land was actually used as a dump yard. And Khed Brahma municipality decided to develop it into a green space and park for the people there. And Harnav is also a non-perennial river, so the water can only be enjoyed during the rainy season. So it was a challenge for us to, develop this particular place where water is non-perennial, and at the same time, in order to create some interest value or to attract, and an attraction for people to come here. And the way we started working on this design was the conceptual idea was more evolving around the entire edge, which was parallel to the water body, and uh, we thought that might be, these linear pathways or, linear strips could be of an interest value. So the very initial sketch was more in order to make these linear pathways which would run parallel to the river edge, and they can form interesting spaces. But however, while developing, these series of sketches, we realized that might be, creating different layers or different, movements on this at varied scale could be more interesting. And that's how, first initially they were like more like linear strips, but as the design developed, it got developed into more of places which are like up and down. If I link back, so these actually are spaces which these actually are pathways which will run parallel to the water edge, and they form different kind of spaces where they are of interest value of walking. At the same time, they form different spaces where one could sit. At the same time, they sometimes they get converted into bridges, and that's how trying to share it on the plan, where the plan is more of series of these linear parallel walkways, but it becomes quite interesting when seen sectionally. It creates different kind of connections to the entire space, because one keeps on walking up and down through series of these linear pathways. And we tried giving different pauses which would connect these linear strips together. And these pauses are somewhere it gets converted into an entire lotus pond, somewhere there are pauses of green spaces, somewhere it gets converted into amphitheaters. And it is through these pauses that these linear strips get connected and create interesting spaces around the entire environment. And it was interesting to solve this, but at the same time it was a big challenge, because moment you try to put something which is linear and putting it up and down at a different levels, channelizing water becomes a big challenge, because eventually you have to give well, there has to be valleys and ridges formed so that the water could be channelized. And if KK.
Yeah, it's just a plan showing the movement of how you perceive and how you move into the space. As I mentioned, the entry of the park is from this corner. So when you arrive or when you enter into the park, you have this linearity in your perceiveness. So there will be a linear streets or linear walkway, but as you move ahead you cannot actually walking into the one streets. So basically the red line shows the movement of how you move into the park. So it goes up and down, and you actually cross that from one edge to another edge while moving towards the further sides. And this blue line shows the water movement. So each and every slopes are meticulously designed, or I can say resolved, that water should be through the park, and eventually it will be merged into the river. So that is how all the sections has been worked out.
And also to add to that, if I go back to wherever the pauses are formed or wherever the water is collected, those actually end up being those green spaces where plantation is done. So even if the water gets collected in those spaces, they are utilized for those greens, which are already growing there. And also, as KK mentioned, there are the way these pauses are worked out, that it gives you a scope to move from one slope to the another. As we can see it in these sections, the entire section through the park is going up and down, where somewhere it is from here that we try to enter, and it is somewhere it becomes a bridge, somewhere it slopes down, and at the same time when two slopes are running parallel, somewhere it also ends up becoming interesting sitting space. And they can be, and the slopes are worked out where even the walking becomes interesting. So though it is linear, as you keep on going up and down parallel to the edge, it can be an interesting place to be. And these are the photographs of the same. Actually, this was a lotus pond which was conceptualized, but through series of development, there was something that they went out of money, and the lotus somehow ended up being a different kind of landscape altogether. This is the same place where also these pauses, the way they are designed such that there are all these linear strips that they run parallel. And the space frame and the pauses, they are positioned such that they help in tying these linear strips together. So even these space frame, it is diagonally positioned so that one can also move from one slope to another. It provides a direction for one to dissect through these spaces. At the same time, the space frame helps in tying these linear slopes together. This is a photograph of the same. These are the pauses that we were talking about, and these are the places where actually the water can get channelized and can pass from one particular linear strip to the other one. And so even if it gets collected, it can be used for those green spaces in the plantation area. It's a photograph of the same where all these pauses and lawn areas are created. And this is the site where the Harnav River runs. It's a photograph of the same during the evening time. And it's a park which is being used extensively because in Khet Brahma, most of the public spaces are more associated with temples. And this is a place which gives an opportunity to be like a picnic spot or even for kids to come. And it is because of this particular element, the entire park gets a new life or a new interest to come and visit this place. Here, this is a second project that we would like to discuss is about community space. This project is in Ahmedabad. And this project is about the community space in the residential complex. And this project had a fairly simple client brief in terms of developing the open spaces in the residential apartments, in the residential area. And these are, as you can see, these are the buildings. And these were the patches of, open spaces that were given for us to develop. Actually, when the project was given, it already had a proposal, and we were asked to make options, so that a second option could come to develop these open spaces. And in this particular option, there was already, these spaces were there, where one space was developed into a lawn area, the second space was developed into the swimming space. And the client was fairly, convinced about these kind of proposals. But when it was passed on to us, to develop a design, for us, we had a very different view of these kind of spaces that are developed, because these community spaces are in a way the most important spaces of any of these residential areas. And also what happens is that these spaces are the ones which are extensively used during morning hours, during evening hours. And what happens is that there are pockets of spaces which are there, parted spaces, and they somehow fail to integrate with each other. So when this project came to us, I think the first, the first point that, the first thought that came to our mind was to integrate all these parted spaces together somewhere in order so that they can be connected together. So what happens is that whenever one steps down of the house, it is a common space where you can move around freely. The second thing was that in this particular proposal, the open space is dissected by these motor vehicles, and they in fact create quite insecure spaces because you have like one space over here, which is a lawn area, then you have a vehicular movement, and then you have a swimming pool area. So the second thing was also that we wanted to create an entire pedestrian zone connecting all these open spaces together. So these were the two main approaches that through which we started designing this community space. And the proposal that we shared was where we tried to integrate all these open spaces together, creating one and creating different pockets of sitting spaces, activity zones, swimming areas, which are like amenities for this residential area. And we reworked on entirely rerouting the traffic, the vehicular zone. And also taking good amount of hollow plinth where sheltered, closed spaces where swings and other activity zones could be clearly designed, and they could also be connected to the main open spaces. However, I would just like to share that it was not all that easy, because if I reshare this proposal, the moment if I take the hollow plinth areas, all the car spaces are the ones which I need to balance. Also, I need to rework on the entire ramp movement of connectivity to the basement. So it was not only about creating these spaces, but it was also statistically working on giving back the car spaces, because there are particular number of car requirements for all these kind of residential societies. So in order to materialize this plan, we reworked on the entire vehicular movement. We changed the ramp, the position of the ramp, so that the vehicular movement also could be clearly articulated, and meticulously counted each vehicular park space so that we can take away the hollow plinth area to create semi-open spaces which could be connected to the garden. And this is how we were able to convince the client in order to give us some of the hollow plinth area which could be worked with the open spaces and lawn areas. And then we started working on designing of each of these pocket spaces where there is an entire entrance. I'll get into the details of each of them one by one, and adding different activities and different zones, because these kind of residential societies have different age groups and they have different demands. And also what happens is that socially, people have different behavior patterns also. Sometimes they like to sit in groups, sometimes they like to sit in bigger groups. At the same time, they do require multiple of choices also for these kind of sitting spaces. And in the kind of weather that Ahmedabad has, you require lots of green spaces which are shaded. At the same time, the shade has to be such, the vegetation has to be such that it can remain green at least almost round the year, so that the sitting also becomes comfortable. So all this, this visualization of all these space, when delayered, it gives you lots of design directions, that even the green space is not only about plantation, but it is about creating of planters which are going to be of good depth, so that a larger, tree could be accommodated. But at the same time, I also want to share that when the project came to us, the entire basement slab was casted. So we didn't have good opportunities to create depth for planters. Hence, that was also a big challenge. Though having like really, beautiful ideas about creating green spaces and planters and continuous walkways, the project already had certain limitations. Basement is already there, and hence, whatever planters are going to come up, they are going to come up above. And then how to create the depth, how to create the wideness so that the green could be accommodated. And hence, however, it was pretty interesting, and we started going one by one, where we really enjoyed working on this, where we started taking each of the pocket and trying to detail out and give each pocket and a particular identity in terms of water feature, or in terms of vertical planters, or in terms of more shaded green spaces, in terms of different kind of sitting areas that could have that identity. So people staying there will start associating these spaces with these kind of elements, and hence they can get connected more. So this is one space where there is an entire water body at the in this particular area. You have the sitting, and then you have a canopy. It's a tensile structure, and there is shade there. And here, from the sitting area, one can actually have the entire vista of the central court. And on the two sides, you have the building. So this happens to be sandwiched between the building area. This is one pocket. This is the second one where it happens. It is directly at the entrance, where this is the security cabin area. And here there are series of vertical planters which are of different height, and hence the intershading creates a very interesting space in the front. And it also has plantations which are creepers. So and the creepers also have like different flowers, and hence the entire place is not only shaded, but it is because of the vegetation and the colors and everything, it gets a very different identity. And this is the pool area, where obviously the swimming pool area in the residential society also requires different kind of privacies, different layers of privacies, which we were able to achieve through the thick plantation. At the same time, plantation also adds value to the entire water feature. And this is a section through the central lawn areas, where there is a tensile structure, and then there is a water feature at the back. And this is a central lawn, and there are walkways at the edges. This is a section through the entrance area, where there are vertical planters, and this is the swimming pool area, and entirely the lower slab is the basement. This is what I was trying to share, that when the project was presented, it was already there was a slab there. So everything that had to come up has to be of different levels, where vegetation could also take place. At the same time, the height should not be so much so that the entire place the place value is compromised. Here, I have specifically shared this drawing. This is the entrance area drawing, where there are series of vertical planters in this area. There is the swimming pool over here. There is a thick green, and this is an entire security cabin area. Here, we at ULab use working drawing as an important tool for design development. So this is where, it is not only a drawing where working drawings are used for constructions, but working drawings are a tool where the entire design starts, developing. Like at this stage, we were very clear also not only about how will the entire structure come up, but also about each and every pattern that the flooring will take, each and every pattern that will come up on the on the vertical walls or on the frames that are coming up. What are the materials that they are going to be used? And it is through these language that we are able to harmoniously connect all these spaces together. So initially, when I shared that it is about integration, Integration is not only in terms of physically connecting it and making a whole space, but integration is also about connecting all these verticals, horizontals, small spaces, big spaces, having a similar language of material, patterns, color palette. So that will tie the entire space together, though they are happening at different levels and they are positioned at different places. This is a section through the same entrance space where these are the vertical planters and this is a swimming pool. Even way the height of these vertical planters are designed such that they create these, if you can see, these are the enclosures that are created, which remains shaded, throughout the entire day. Even in peak May, we have visited this place during peak May, and it is because of this enclosure and intershading device that this space is very comfortable, to sit even during afternoon hours in peak May. And the creepers and the vegetations also are specifically selected that they are of hardy varieties. They remain green throughout the year and they are low maintenance. As I was sharing, working drawing stage is the most important stage for us. It is through that we try to develop the design, and this drawing is specifically shared to suggest that how any pattern that is coming up on the floor, and tying together. Similarly, the way the pattern happens on the vertical part, whether it is like this is the entire part. These are the vertical planters, fine. And these are the fins where part of it is enclosing the swimming pool. Part of it is also forming the compound wall for the society. So everything is resolved at that particular stage, which gives a holistic value to the entire project. These are some of the photographs during the construction stage where I thought it would be interesting to share that. These are the fins. And these are the handmade tiles and these are the vertical actually planters. This is a swimming pool area, and these are the walls with the stone cladding. And if you and this is a central lawn area with planters and sitting, and this is the water body where here also I would like to share that the patterns, the size of the tile, everything is decided so that it holistically links to the entire project. Even here, yeah, just one.
So, yeah, even in this case, the below it is the basement, so we have to provide light to the basement, so there will be cutouts in that slab, and it's also light and the ventilation for the basement. So these are the cutouts that we have provided in the slab, and also the same pattern we follows in that cutouts also. There will be a jali on the top.
The jali has got the same pattern that is being used for the stone cladding. The pattern that is on the jali, which is taking the light from the above, the same pattern, I'll try to share, is on the stone cladding, which happens at the backdrop of the water body. And we were quite clear from the beginning. So the patterns are not ones that they arbitrarily come. They are there is a selection of a particular pattern. They are scaled up, they are scaled down, they are combined together to make another design. But in a way, they link together. Everywhere, whenever you are moving in the entire space in the community area, you are able to relate So it is not something that arbitrarily comes up. So whether it is a floor that you see, or whether it is a screen that you see, or whether you see something which is on the stone, they all have similar kind of motives with different scale and proportion. Try to combine together to form, and they might be combined together, to form a different pattern. But still, the concept is the same. These are the photographs of the same during the construction stage. This is the central lawn area, and this is where I was trying to share that we were, in fact, quite meticulously we designed these planters, because these planters needed the depth, because we were very clear that we wanted shaded trees here, and the shaded trees require a particular depth of the planter. And at the same time, when one is moving in this area, it was also quite very clear that the height of the planter should not disturb your eye view. Otherwise, the entire ambience of the green space would be lost. So that's the reason I wanted to share this photograph, that this is how it looks raw. But once, when finally one sees it, we are never able to perceive that planter. And also the material that is being used, that's cladded on this, the Indian travertine of the stone, the natural stone, because of the use of the natural material and the color, that it never gets into your eye. So it's a green that takes your attention, and hence you feel that you are in a park. So what I would again like to share is that all these decisions, they're like really small decisions, but they make a big difference, eventually, when the entire project is materialized. This is the stones, again Indian travertine, and this is sandstone, sorry, and it is on which the carving is done. This is a sandstone which has been used for the vertical cladding. This is the backdrop of the water body. Even this is during the construction stage, where we have the vertical planters and there are lights inside. We have positioned lights inside it. Now, also, there was a good amount of work done behind where to put the light fixtures, because all these vertical planters, they are just one besides the other. So the circumference of one particular one light spread should be such that it doesn't overlap with the other one. And hence, even while deciding where it should be positioned, we had actually gone on site and decided, okay, this is how the entire circle comes up here complete. So the second one, the height of the light should be placed that way. And that is how, even when at last at the end, we were able to get a complete, light circles of these vertical planters. So this is how, that's what I was sharing, where the light fixtures in each of these vertical planters are positioned at a particular height, so that each vertical planter has got a good circumference where they show a good spread, and the entire lower surface could be interestingly seen. These are the photographs of the complete project. This is the same, the complete project, where I also shared the photographs when it was on construction, and we were able to see just the planters. And it is because also the way the vegetation, the plantation is selected, the plantation is selected based on different heights. And hence it will always be, what will happen is that at an eye level, one is always able to perceive a greenness, because there are varieties of heights for each particular plant species that been selected. The plant species is selected based on the different heights that they grow when they mature. These are the pockets of the sitting spaces, and even the pattern that is on the flooring that is over here, the same pattern is repeated in the entrance area. This is the main lawn area, the central lawn area with the water body. that I already shared in the beginning. And these are the planters which are taking, this is taking the uh, bigger plants and shrubberies. And these are the hollow planes which we had convinced the client to take. These were initially reserved for parking. And eventually we were able to convince him where these hollow planes are used as a swing area now. And this is from this area you can directly see the central lawn area. Also, just to add on, all these backdrops, we ended up using jali because it's a good air direction there. So there is a parking that happens on the rear side, but then we're not gone with enclosing it with a solid wall. There are all jalis that are made. So all these hollow plane spaces are completely airy and has a good ventilation throughout the entire day. After this, these were the projects that we shared were more like community spaces, parks, trying to cater to, lots of faceless clients where the requirements are more generic. And now I move on to specific private residence where this is a project of Gable House, which is in Ahmedabad. And here also the requirements is fairly simple where the client required 3 sleeping spaces with living, formal drawing and living spaces and dining spaces, kitchen spaces basically. And the plot is a rectangular plot, and it happens at a cul-de-sac. So here, when we started off with a massing layout again to understand how much we can build and how much we can leave open. And we did start with, as you can see in the first option, we did start creating spaces where we were able to, create some court kind of situation in the middle so that there is a good connectivity between the inside and the outside. But however, and we did make a series of options, for this first massing layout. But eventually, what happened is that while developing this, we realized that we were using lots of space from the site, and we are trying to compromise lots of open spaces because of this particular massing layout. And eventually, what we ended up with is creating a parallel mass, which is more like a parallel to the entire rectangular plot, which goes in there. And there's a parallel green, that runs through it, so that the mass could be punctured at different positions, so that the green can come inside. And these are some of the options of the same, where what KK tried to work on was, because this was an option that normally what happens is that when we have a project that comes here, both of us works on different options. And this was one of the options that worked out really well that KK worked on, was where the entire linear mass was punctured in the middle, and green spaces were taken in, where eventually this middle space is where the mass is punctured, and open spaces are created on both the sides, where one side it happens to be the garden, and one side, while on the rear side it happens to be a courtyard. And this space ended up becoming the most important space where, double heights, single heights, we thought that could end up into a very interesting volume. And as that space was open, taking green from one side and having court on the other side, it could have more daylight through the entire day, and could be more interactive space. And that's how we thought that, that could actually end up becoming a family, dining room space where, the entire family, or those are the spaces that we tend to use during the entire day. And then on the front side, is what will take the formal spaces, while the rear side would end up taking private spaces, which are like sleeping spaces and then kitchen and utility area. And these were part of some initial design process and exercises. And what eventually ended up was a layout which is more like linear, having a good strip of green which runs parallel, and then there is a parallel mass taking all functional spaces of the house, where the in the front there is a living room area, followed by an entire double height volume which takes the family space and the dining, and then the rear side is a kitchen, and then there happens to be a sleeping room, a bedroom, a sleeping space. And that's how the entire plan started, or plan got articulated. And it was also during this stage that we were clear, after the plan, while we were working on the plan, it was also clear that we were able to get a series of single height and double height spaces. And we wanted to use these double height space to our advantage in creating interesting volumes within. And this is how we started that sometimes MS could be used in order to create interesting volume, either different from something which is like a flat roof. And these are also some of the explorations that how the section could be worked out for single height and for the double height spaces. These were some very initial sketches in order to work out how the entire volume could be shaped up after getting double height and single height spaces. And eventually, this is how the entire plan got articulated, where this is the entrance area, where the front space becomes the living room. This entire space is the dining area with a double height. And then there is a staircase, which is more like a light element, is more like a bridge connecting spaces together. And this is the bedroom space. And as I shared earlier, we really wanted to explore the entire volumetric dimensions. We ended up with the gable roof, and these gable roofs were designed more like floating roofs, where the entire front mass is lower, and as one goes deep in, it gets double height. And then in the front there is an entire tower, which is vertical tower. So what happens is that, sharing in this section is that what happens is that there is a contrast right in the front elevation of the entire house, where there is a single height space, and then it is connected with an entire tower which is almost triple height. And this creates a very interesting, volume and interesting form from the street side. At the same time, from the inner space, the living room gets a different scale because of the single height. And this particular area is where one actually enters into the house, and you are in fact greeted by the entire triple height space. This is a drawing of the same, where we are able to see the living room space and the entrance area. And this is elevation, the front elevation. And then as one goes deep inside, there is a double height where the upper story becomes a bedroom space. However, what happens is that in the front mass is only where the living room and the entire triple height tower is the one that is seen in the front. And it is on the rear side that the entire mass is loaded. This is a section across where one is able to see the different height and different levels. But what is interesting is that though having a good volume and a good floor plate, running parallel, what happens that in the front one is able to see quite sleek volume of just the living room, and the entire triple height tower. And it is this volume that is embraced and held by an entire green garden that is over here. And this is an exploded view of how the roof sits and creates interesting volume within the space. Here, I've just tried to share certain photographs during the construction stage, that when the roof, the truss started getting erected. And we have gone for a Caesar truss so that we can get interesting triangulated volume within the living room area, and same thing that happens in the bedroom area, which happens on the first floor. And this is also during the construction stage, that it is after the truss gets erected, the entire shuttering happens to take the sloping roof. These are the photographs of the same. And also, as shared earlier, we wanted this. It is also, we really wanted to take advantage of this sloping roof, where the triangulated volumes within, yes, they are really interesting, but at the same time, when it meets the wall, we wanted them to be floating, and hence there's an entire window slit that is given at the edge where the eaves end, so that I'll share the photographs of its completion, that one actually feels as if the roof is floating, because the eaves are not connected with the wall, and there's an entire edge that happens at the base with a window, and these windows are the ones with the clear glass. So you have the lights coming throughout the entire day, which makes the entire space feel and experientially very different. These are the photographs of the same, where because of the entire glass that happens at the edge, or better say, there is a space, so one feels as if the entire roof is more like floating. And these are the photographs of the inner space, and it is because of the gable roof and keeping these eaves free, that different shades of lights are available throughout the entire day. At the same time, both the sides of the gable roofs, we have kept the fixed glass, so that the light enjoyed during different times of the day and during different seasons is also very different. These are the photographs of the living room area. As you can see, the play of the light and shadow. And also, as you have, there are jalis and trusses and many other, elements in this space, and which cast different light and shadow in this entire, volume, which makes it quite dramatic. So even when we have visited this house this was during, I think, January, and even when we visited it recently, all these light and shadows, the shades and plays, they look very different. And hence it is because of that, the entire double height volume or even the single height volume that is created looks quite dynamic. And the color palette that is used in the entire house is exposed RCC and plaster wall and wood and natural materials. So it is because of that one is able to actually, experience this light and the entire play of shadows, sorry. And this is where I would shift to again a different scale, where this particular project of ours is our own studio, which we had initially started with our living space, and it is it is a scale which is more like interior design scale, but then even the decisions, I would like to share that the decisions that are taken at this scale and the approach and the method here is also very similar to the method that I think we had adopted for the community space or the parks, that I shared. Here, this is our studio that we started off, and this is a raw space which was still yet to be designed. And here, when we started off, it was our apartment where we converted only the living room area into the studio, and it was a tight space, and it spans something like 10 feet by 17 feet. And at the same time, as it is part of our living space, we wanted to create work space at the same time, sitting spaces and living spaces, so that it could be formally used or the used by family also. And we started with different layouts, but however, because of the constraint of the physical space that is available over here, it was very difficult for us to develop an open plan where where the entire space could give us flexibility of either combining together or might be carving out different spaces, because eventually this is going to be a studio where there could be workstations, people would be coming, we would be meeting the clients. At the same time, might be evening hours are the times where we might be again using this space very differently with the family. And hence we were also quite ambitious from this 10 feet by 17 feet of the floor plate. And we started with lots of layout, working on it. And eventually, what we ended up was that we removed all the walls and we tried to create an open plan where it was more like envelopes, creating frames and envelopes, where frames were more like, there were frames which were transparent, porous, and solid. And then trying to make a permutation combination of each of them, so that somewhere they could become a store space, somewhere they could also become a table and make a usable space, or somewhere they could be just trying to create or divide two spaces. And eventually we ended up with this layout where it is quite simple in the plan, but it was very interesting when we started developing it one by one, where this is an entire sketch of how the partition would come up, where we wanted an entire partition or the vertical frame to be something like 2 meters without having any other vertical middle support member. And hence that was also, this is a sketch that we started off, where that was also a challenge, because we are also quite clear about the size of the wooden member that we would use. Because even in this case, we were very clear that we wanted to follow the similar wooden member size for the furniture or for the vertical frames that we would be taking, or for the tables, so that there is a harmoniousness in the entire space. And it is because of that, it's like 1.5 by 1.5 inch member that we wanted to use in this. And hence we started with these series of sketch, so that through the same cross section we were able to design different partitions. And here, taking you through the series of these sketches, actually we wanted a 2 meter a partition that would span 2 meters. And here it was difficult to span with the middle member. So we designed the entire store. So the entire cabinet would actually act as a beam, because having a counterweight, so that this entire partition of 2 meter could stand stable.
So the size of the member also derived from the material that we have used. It's a reclaimed wood we have used in this, all the partitions and furnitures. So there are limitation of sizes and the sizes available. So that is why that 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch wooden member came. And for that we have to provide lots of bracings, either for the verticals or for the horizontal. So only vertical member can't stand, so there has to be bracings in between. So that is how the this space divider or the partition has been worked out.
And also, right from the beginning, we were very clear that we are going for nailless joint. So it is going to be, it is going to be a tenon and mortise joint with fingers. So even that was a due consideration to be taken. So that's the reason the number of bracings also increases, because we're not going to use nail anywhere. And all these decisions were, we were quite clear about these decisions before doing this, and that's how these sketches started developing and shaping. And eventually, here again, I would like to share that working drawings are the most important tool for us for design development. So, all these drawings were meticulously made before we started, working. So we had already completed all these drawings, and each and every size and cabinet and the beading putty and everything was already designed and made. The drawings were clearly made before the Mistri came in and he started working. And that's the reason I thought to share these drawings where we are quite clear about each and every bidding that is going to come there, how much is that vertical going to span, what is the size of the shutter, where the groove is going to come, where the bracing is going to come. And this is how eventually, these are the photographs when it started on site. And also, I would just like to share that this is a 2 meter vertical frame that I was trying to share. And here it is being braced with this arm over here. So it's because of this entire T kind of a situation that happens that both of them remain stable, because we were also clear that we have not connected it to the ceiling above nor the roof below. They are like free. They are still freestanding, and so that's the reason they have to be stable by itself. So sharing back that all these weights, that the store unit and the weight that will come in will be counterbalancing this entire frame structure. That is how it is based on that that they were designed. And also by keeping it free from the ceiling and free from the floor, though these frames, they were more like frames, they are more like envelopes, and but still you are able to see the ceiling continuous and the floor continuous. So the light was never stopped. So the space was, in spite of adding so much to it, it still had that spaciousness which we were able to achieve it even after these designs. So these are the photographs of the same, where we have the same wooden member, and these are the final photographs of that 2.1 meter partition. It's the same, and we try to accommodate many things here. There is a swing, and there are workstations, and these are still units, store units. At the same time, there are vertical niches, horizontal niches, and each and everything connected through a nailless joint of tenon and mortise everywhere. And I think it is through certain decisions that we were not able, that we did not compromise, that we were able to achieve this spaciousness in spite of adding so much to the same space. These are the sketches of the same. Some is talking about the tables, some is talking about the bedroom and the bed area. The bedroom, one bed is with the storage unit, the other bed is bottom hug, but still the size remains the same. So even when you move in the entire house, there is still a harmony that one is able to sense. Or whether it's a dining table for that matter. These are the sketches for the same, where Even in each sketch, if you see, there is a clear sketch of where the beading is going to come and which is going to take the wood. These are the few sketches of the sitter, where the angle would be, how much the angle would be. And these are the final photographs of the sitter. This is one door handle which we really enjoyed designing it. This is actually the door which connects the studio space to the inner dining space area. And we were really inspired from the door handles that traditionally used to be in fact in my house, where it is more like a door stopper, right? And you can close the door. It's a door stopper and a door handle also, and it can be operated from both the sides. I can operate it from this side. Similarly, I can operate it from the either side, and this is the same thing that we have used. It's a photograph of the same. The last project that I would share in the series is we have just extended the studio, and where Placid Hues is the extension of Studio Lab, where it is more like a formal space where we are. And this particular place is in a way, yes, it's an extension because it is actually just 5 minutes away from even where the Studio ULab used to be. And then so we see it more as an extension of the physical space, where this particular studio is also in a commercial complex. It has got offices around, and the challenge here was to through design get that experiential or spaciousness and the quality of light and ventilation in this kind of commercial complex. And that's what was the struggle. And at the same time, we still wanted the open plan where everything is one, but still there are spaces which are still defined, and hence has got also flexibility to combine together and become one, at the same time work as alcoves. So here it happens to be on the 4th floor here, where, as I shared, it's a fairly simple commercial complex with offices all around, and that's where it sits. And here too, we wanted an open plan where it is just through these series of different envelopes of more like cuboids and vertical planes that one is able to divide spaces and create workstations or sitting spaces. And at the same time, the light should not be stopped anywhere. And also we wanted to this time try a different material, and hence we've gone for birch ply, where the entire the light and the qualitativeness when the light falls on the birch ply is also very different. So we wanted to use a different material from what we used in our earlier studio. And here also, as you can see it in the section, it is just a series of these cuboids which forms the store units, and then somewhere where the plane comes out and horizontally, it ends up becoming a table. Otherwise, there is nothing much that is being used or worked out, and everything happens at the edges. So the middle space is still an open plan. These are the sections of the same, where actually this space is the one where we are sitting presently and presenting, and this is our workstation where the architects sit. And these are the photographs of the same, where as I shared, they are all the store spaces or the verticals, the partitions that are designed, they are clean geometrical shapes as cuboids or horizontal planes, and the birch ply is used as raw without putting any without getting into any other details. so that it is able to reflect good amount of light. And there is a, that there is more like the light comes in and it is reflected to these surfaces, and that's how it looks quite warm and rich. These are the photographs of the same space. And here also I would add that we have also used fluted glass, where fluted glass are used for doors and a particular partition. And again, the reason behind using fluted glass is the way the light falls on and it gets reflected and creates a different kind of shadows, within, So that's really interesting. This is the main space from where we are able to see the workstation, and there is an entire partition, a slider, which is clear glass. Hence, it gives an opportunity to again convert it into two spaces. At the same time, when the partition moves on, entirely the studio workspace can happen. And I think that becomes that's an important aspect, because that's how, it's nothing like something which is very formal in our studio. It is more like everyone working together, so one is able to interact very clearly. These are the photographs of the scene. And this is another space which happens at the entrance with certain other workstations. Okay, that's all. That's all from us.
Thank
I
you.
ask.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Vipuja and KK.
Shall I
Over to you.
stop sharing?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was fantastic to see. There are many things that one can take away from this, but one thing that I definitely enjoyed and that I want to talk about is the drawings at various scales, and the way, there's a love and care with which you use and explore with hand drawings, and that is something that is maybe not very common these days. So even if it is, let's say, in an interior design project, you are working on a detail, sketching the groove, the bidding, all the way up to that Harnav riverfront project where you are trying to work out the conceptual idea. So there are varying scales, and at each scale, I think the drawing has a role to play. So that was one thing that I really enjoyed, looking at all these various scales at which you use the drawings. Also, the construction drawings is something that generally remains as a kind of a boring uh, tool, that is something that I just do it to get things done. But normally people don't realize the potential of, what that can offer once you start bringing in different materials, textures into it, along with the technical information. Then there is a much more possibilities over there. So that was also something that I really enjoyed. So I have few questions, and if you have time, we can go ahead, and I think we can take them. So you started your presentation by saying that, the in your practice when it comes to the philosophy, there are two things that are, uh, on one hand, you are trying to create the humane spaces. You have certain concerns of light, ventilations, and on the other hand, the ambitious requirements. Okay, so you're trying to find balance between trying to synchronize between, on one hand, you have certain concerns from the climate, from the ventilation, from the design language, and on the other hand, there is this ambitions. Now, usually in academic realm, people, we are generally exposed to that human aspect, but moment we encounter with the practice, when the client comes in, the second part, the ambitions, enters into the stage. So I would like to know a little bit more as to how do you find that balance, of how that synchronization. Maybe you can share through one of the experiences.
It's a very good question that you asked. Actually, what happens is that As a normal method for any of, and then I'll pick up a project, to tell you that, to share with you. When we start with a project, when we start designing, we start with these end sketches. And for us, the priorities are these basic questions, because what happens whenever a project comes, the client comes up with a very simple brief initially. The brief is very simple. When client meets you for the first or the second time, बस 2 ही bedroom चाहिए या सब इतना ही चाहिए, सिर्फ इतना ही चाहिए, सिर्फ इतना ही. But then the moment, you start off, you realize, like, itna nahi, itna zyada, that ambitious, the word ambitious, then you understand. It's after the 4th and 5th meeting. And it is through our experience, we have realized that it is very important to prioritize certain of your conceptual ideas, prioritize certain ideas, where, and then there is a set priority. Like, giving an example of Gable House for that matter, or even Khed Brahma for that matter, where I can use the example of Khed Brahma because it is municipality, so they have fixed requirements. So there we were very clear that we never wanted to go away with that entire, flow, because we always wanted to stick to it, because that is something that might attract people there, because it's a small town and it could actually be of an interest value for people to come. Also, the reason behind it is there is already an existing garden with kids play area in that. So people would require something else to come there. So as a priority, we were very clear that, we will always stick to this entire movement that is happening and the ups and downs. But then other things, we can, prioritize and, let it go. Linking to the other example of Gable House for that matter, where we were very clear about these double height spaces and having a volume which is not, sheltered with a flat roof. It will have a volume which is going to be sheltered with a different kind of roof, so that the entire space is interesting. So we were very clear about it. Also about double heights and single heights, and also about the garden. So in that case, we already know that these are the 3 things we are not going to go away with, and the direction. We were also very clear that this is where we are going to position it, because that is how the sun sets on the west side. So you are able to get really good sun rays which will happen in the living room. So as a designer, you are very clear that this all will happen. It's going. And then when the ambitiousness comes in, like even in the Gable House, it has gone through series of changes, So then, those ambitiousness, we will then, permutation, combination will happen. So, if I just put it in simple words and then KK can add, is that when we are working with conceptual ideas, the main priority are those questions that we have very clearly spelled out, which are like very basic. And then, as I also spelled out in the starting, that we'll try to innovate them. The same light that I'm using in my studio, because it is north, I have used all these whites and birch fly, because also it happens to be, it is sandwiched with one other layer of office space. So I know that the light is going to be very important, and hence I have to grab it. And hence a material decision, the kind of tapestry I use. So I'll never compromise that, because that's a priority. Similarly, in the Gable House, I know that the natural light that I want to grab in has to be different. I want those spaces. So I will never go away with those decisions. I'll also hold on to it. Other things are the ones which I have decided, but then, they might be like plus and minus as it goes on, and, I might compromise it. That's how I KK can help, but that's
But yeah, that's for me. It's a you can say art of convincing the client because when that Harnav River project came to us, it was like municipal corporation. So they want a garden, bagicha banana. That is what their requirement. So they have very typical image of lawn area and the children's play zone and all those things. But what what we have done, we actually never share those sections with them. So we only always in all the meetings we always share the plan. It's just a linear streets and the garden, and the sections are already done and resolved, but we never shared. And one day when the construction are going to start, we just share the sections, and they don't realize ठीक है करो, and that is how that happens. So uh, that's as Vipuja said, that section we want to do that up and down and street. So that's the only focus to us. बाकी सब ठीक है, थोड़ा इधर उधर चलता है.
Yes,
Even
so yeah.
even I as also sharing all these projects, they were at different scales, but there are different clients, and hence a client have a very different role to play. Like in the residential apartment of the community spaces, that was a very different experience. Even the client, even in that case, the client was open space and amenities. Amenities is the one. More amenities, more real estate value. And obviously it's a builder project, so they might not go into lots of material library, because it's a headache for them to get into this exhaustive material library, different sizes, maintenance, plantation of different species. But then in that case, what KK rightly said, convincing them. So in that case, the drawings, especially in that project, drawings really helped us. We always used to make lots of sketches. That I'm not sure, but lots of sketches to convince the client कि आप ऐसा करोगे तो ऐसा दिखेगा, अच्छा दिखेगा. Because if you see that community space, the project of the community space, it has got an exhaustive material library, which is very difficult to convince a builder to go for it. So, yes, Ayaz, please.
Yeah, no, so it's basically one, like in every project, you are trying to identify certain core concerns that, okay, this is something that I cannot let go of. And then there are also, on the other hand, like you said, that okay, you also understand the needs of the project, the needs of the client, and we are not being trying to become very rigid about certain things. You are trying to accommodate there, and then you try to negotiate and convince through sketches and through views, etc. So I think it's more about the negotiating, and I think this is something that the young practices, the people, they are where they are learning. I think these are the lessons, I think, where if they want to build a long term practice, if they don't understand this part of being into the practice, then it's not going to be possible. It's not about I centric thing. I mean, there is a client when comes in, certain ambitions are going to come in, and how do you negotiate by bringing them on the table? So I think that's an important thing that one can take away. So you talked about certain those core things that you don't want to let go of. Now those are very in the sense that certain very practical requirements of climate, natural light, ventilation. But is there also there is something that is other than this, as a kind of a design language or something that you are either at UA lab, either consciously or subconsciously trying to arrive at, trying to evolve? For example, in that Harnav Bridge project, I think the idea of starting with the waves in the abstract way and then coming it was certainly beyond these practical aspects. Of course, they come in the aspects of sustainability, the rainwater, etc., are going to be there, but there is definitely something more to it as a kind of a design language, the way you treat with material, the way you want to bring in certain tectonic qualities. So what are those? Are there any specific um design language that you are trying to looking at or arrive at as ULM?
Yeah, there. See, there are two things to it. I would like to put it tangible and intangible both. So even if you see Harnav River Wedge, it is breaking away from the way you see the parts, right? You see the section, you will never find that plain ground there, so it's a very different exploration of that entire space, and that could be of a value. Even when we talk about the community space, the entire definition of something called an open space in the residential building is changed, right? It is more like a park, and that is what is the reality today. Many of us are staying, we ourselves stay in a residential society, and the moment you see these kind of spaces, they so those are the qualitative aspects that we are trying to dwell on. Yes, and in terms of building language, yes, definitely, there is, because it is not something that I can say is running common across all the project, because it is more like each project is derives its own language once the ideas get materialized. Right? In case of again taking example of, or maybe taking example of our studio, the studio, our initial studio, just by using and respecting reclaimed wood and its particular size, that guided us to develop a very different kind of a design language. Now just imagine if we did not use reclaimed wood, fine, it would be like a fresh wood. The things would be different. It would be completely different. So I think the language is something. Yes, it is definitely derived, but it is not something that is common, that is running across all our project. The language also I would also like to put it that it is not very clear when we start working on it. It develops itself once the ideas are conceptualized, and we become very confident that yes, this is how we want to do. Based on that, the language is then decided, and the language is of the form, material, the patterns that will come in, that will give it the physical, the tangible part of it, that which yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good to know that. Just a little bit about your practice. I mean, both of you have a diverse kind of skills and backgrounds, as that bring together on table. So also UA Lab is a kind of a multidisciplinary design studio I mentioned. So how does the practice benefit by bringing the being such a cross-disciplinary or a multidisciplinary place? Because one thing that I could relate to is in that community living space, the canopies that you have, these planters, now that's an architectural element, it's a landscape element at the same time, and it's not a way these kind of possibilities emerge when you have diverse kind of skill sets coming together as an architect, landscape architect. So how does ULab benefit by being the multidisciplinary?
It benefits a lot. It benefits a lot also, not just being not just being not just being diverse, but we are a bit open also. We are open to exploration, right?
Yeah.
And that's the reason we enjoy exploring. So that's the reason many things that are, that are designed, we know that we'll crack it somehow. We'll crack it. So that's very important. Like frankly speaking, those vertical planters, was one raw sketch that I made for my first visit, but I didn't know how to actually construct it. And it is through KK, and then we kept on working on it, and then eventually we were able to convert it into a reality where it is not only about the visual of it, but it has to be, it's going to take soil, it's going to take water, it's going to take plants, it doesn't need to get corroded. There are many aspects of it, fine. And also what happens is that I feel that we are in a good partnership, because KK is able to crack, pragmatically many things. Where I can think loud, where I'll think loud, and then he will help me out to crack it. That okay, this is how we'll do it. Fine, don't worry. This is how we'll do it. Like even the studio here, we have this slider. It's something like.
It's about 10 feet wide 10 feet by 10 feet. It's a slider, and that is what we are going to slide 10 feet, and there will be two working spaces. One is for us and one is for the architects, and whenever it requires it opens, and the whole studio becomes one. So
And even in that case, we have used MS section, but we wanted it to be sleek because nowhere we have used a specific section even in the birch ply and in the frames. So we were very clear about that it has to look sleek. So in that 10 feet, and then so initially it was not working, it was not opening, it got jammed and all that stuff. So no, it happens. It's a reality, in our studio. And then we kept on working, and eventually it's fine now.
It's amazing to see, the way in which you can reduce the section sizes, even the at your house. That 1.5 inch by 1.5, which is almost become like mild steel sections, and to that gives a certain quality, and that
Yeah.
quality is good to see in material like timber, which is expected to be heavy, and that quality is also there. So in the office also you're trying to sort of reduce the size of the sections. So yeah, I think it's good. So maybe you are more like a dreamer, and KK sort of trying to anchor you and said, okay, okay, let's
Yeah,
do it.
let's do that. Yeah.
One final question. We've all heard about R.K. Lakshman. He used to this cartoonist, and when he used to make cartoons, and he used to incorporate. He used to call himself a common man, and he would always include that common man in all his paintings. Now, in many of the drawings that I saw, there was a presence of Lal Vaner in some of the sectional perspectives. Now, who is this Lal Vaner, and what is he doing in the sectional perspectives?
it's just a human scale, which slowly, by drawing and doing, converted into a banner. And once I don't know, I had painted a huge painting which all red, and that is how it came. And so now every section has that human scale.
No, that was good to see. I think. Thank you so much. It was so nice talking to you. You accepted the invite, and fantastic presentation. Good to see. I mean, this is the first opportunity for me. We have been seeing different projects, in isolation. We've also been publishing a lot of projects at ArchiDiaries, some of the projects that you showed. But today, I think it was an opportunity to, across the scale, we could see, your explorations. So that was fantastic. Thank you so much for accepting the invite.
Pleasure.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for inviting us. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And I would just like to conclude here by thanking all the people who've joined on various platforms. And we would continue having these interviews, having these fantastic conversations with designers, with architects, and hope to see you back soon. Thank you so much for joining with us.
Thank you. Thank you.